My name is Bill Linehan, and I'm the Chair of Planning and Development for the Boston City Council. And the subject of the hearing today is docket number 0250, a message in order for a local municipal approval of the application of Podium Developer LLC relating to the Boston Garden Economic Development Project under the Commonwealth's iCube program. This matter is sponsored by the mayor and was referred to the Committee on Planning and Development on February 1st, 2017. I have with me Councilor LaMattina, who is the district councilor from the North End, East Boston, and so forth, and also Josh Sakam, who is the district city councilor for Beacon Hill and the West End. And so we have you surrounded. And as you all know, I am the district city council for District 2, which is on the opposite side of the street of this proposed development. So thank you all for coming here. I'd like to remind folks that this is an on-air live production that is appearing on City Council TV, and City Council TV is now on 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, in case you want to catch up on City Council business going forward. Please, when you're introduced, announce your name and your position so that the viewers will get a sense of who you are and why you say what you say. So, Ron, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the councilors. For the record, my name is Ron Rocco. I'm the Commissioner of the Assessing Department, and I'm here before the committee today on the order that will enable the development of the Hub on Causeway, a project that will have a significant and transformative impact on the North Station area in the city. This project utilizes the iCube program, which the city has employed several times now in redevelopments. The first project we had was the Fan Pier project over in South Boston. And then we also had the New Balance project over at Boston Landing, which yielded a new headquarters there for us and some great infrastructure, including a new train station. And the Fan Nest project over in the Fenway area, which enabled the creation of a public parking garage and a real great mixed-use development there. Since it's been a while since we've had an iCube project before the council, I thought I'd spend a few minutes just kind of reviewing and giving a refresher on the program. The iCube concept and even the program's name originated here in Boston with legislation that we filed in 2006. iCube really leverages the significant state tax revenues that are generated by developments in the city, and it uses that revenue to fund public infrastructure. So under iCubed, the debt for infrastructure is supported by those new state tax revenues. And it's really kind of a unique partnership between the developer, the city, and the state that gets the project done. In this case, and in most iCube cases, the developer will actually construct the infrastructure, and they will pay for the debt service until the buildings are built and occupied. The state will then jump in and will pay the debt service upon occupancy on that infrastructure debt, using the new state tax revenues that are generated as a result of the project. The city's role in the project is to basically serve as a backstop. If for some reason the tax revenues aren't generated, we are then asked to contribute towards that debt service. In this particular case, that would take the form of first using a municipal liquidity reserve that will be funded by the developer, and then secondly, placing infrastructure assessments on the project to pay for it. So before receiving iCubed approval, developer first has to obtain local zoning approval, which the Boston Properties and Delaware North team has done here. They have to demonstrate the project's financial viability and its ability to generate state tax revenues So they've gone through a preliminary approval process with the state, and that has been completed, and they've received that approval. So with that overview in mind, let me get to this project specifically. So the project essentially has four components: a podium on which will be built a 440-unit apartment complex, a 525,000 square foot office building, and 269-room hotel. The first phase of the project is going to be a podium on which those three structures are built. That includes 200,000 square feet of retail, entertainment, and restaurant space. I think for the community, the most important of which is a supermarket, a Star Market that will be there, which will provide an important service there, not only to the North Station, but also North End and West End residents. I think that's something that the community has long asked for and needed. It provides for expansion of the concourse in the Boston Garden to enhance the fan experience and also provides some additional parking at that facility. It provides 175,000 square feet of new office space. The developer is calling that innovative office space, so we hope that that will also help serve the innovative economy that's been so important to Boston's growth over the last few years. And finally, it will provide Champions Row, which is a 15,000 square foot front entrance, if you will, to both the Boston Garden and North Station. So it will provide a long-awaited for front door to the North Station area. The infrastructure improvements that the project will create includes that front door area, as well as a pedestrian connector between the commuter rail station and the orange and green line. So that will allow for an underground connection between those two to facilitate the experience of the passengers there. Won't have to go out in the snow and the rain. It also includes several streetscape and street improvements to Causeway Street that will enhance that area as well. Other benefits from the project is it will, of course, be making and has made a significant contribution to the affordable housing funds. And my personal favorite, it will be generating lots and lots of new tax revenue. We've performed the analysis and have gone over the numbers that were reviewed by the state, and we agree that the new revenues that this project will produce will be far in excess of what is necessary to support the $30 million of infrastructure debt. And we've also been able to work out with the developer, as I mentioned in my opening comments, that they will cover any shortfall, so the city will not be on the hook if the revenues do fall short, which is important for us. So it virtually eliminates any risk to the city in this project. The state has, as I mentioned, has provided preliminary approval, so now we need your vote and your approval before we can move forward and the project can move forward to the next stage. So the order before you today approves the economic development plan for $30 million and confirms the city's commitment to the project under the IQ program. It allows us to create that municipal liquidity reserve, which contains up to 2 times the debt service for the project, and that will be funded by the developer. And it also provides that we will accept any public infrastructure that gets created as a result of the IQ grants. And in this case, that's mostly the streetscape improvements to Causeway Street. So that's the project in a nutshell. I think the administration is very excited about not only the project, but also some of the great transit improvements that the city will be getting and the region will be getting out of these North Station improvements. So we would certainly ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you very much, Ron. We appreciate that, and I think that was very helpful. Before we move on, I'd like to give both councilors an opportunity to ask any questions regarding iCube and the city's position on that. Council Lamartina?
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm excited because we've been talking about this project for many, many years, particularly the supermarket. I don't know how many years we've been talking about supermarket, but I think during the big days, so at least 15, 20 years. I'm sorry. But just a little about the IQ program. So it's $30 million. Is that in deferred taxes from the state? Can you explain that just a little more clearer?
Sure. So, as part of the project, the championed row space, some other improvements to the head house at North Station, that pedestrian concourse, those are all going to be constructed by the developer. The $30 million is a grant that will be made to them that will essentially cover a good chunk of the portion of those costs.
How much do you project tax revenues from this, once this is all completed, will bring into the city?
Well, we looked at it, and I know that over a 5-year period, hold on just a second here. So I did an analysis over the next 7 years. The project will pay $32.3 million over that period of time. So it's going to be quite substantial. Again, the project is going to be done in phases. So that I think that was 7 years after the final phase is completed with the office. So the podium starts first. Those components will generate revenues for us. Then the next phase of the project will be the apartments and the hotel. And then the final phase of the project will be the office.
So in 7 years, it will produce 32 million?
Over the course of that period. And I can give you the,
Yeah, I would like to know,
annual.
after the
Yep.
7 years,
Sure.
how much more revenue we'll see.
Yep.
That's great. No, I'm looking forward. I mean, just having a front door to the garden is very exciting. And the renovations of Causeway Street and the retail space and everything else, I'm a big fan of this project. I've been a big fan for many years. So whatever we could do as a city council to get this going, I'm on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lamattina. Councilor Zakin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. Just a couple questions on the financing. How much will the liquidity reserve fund hold? You said it'll be 2 times debt service.
Right. I don't have the debt service, but that's actually established in the guidelines for the program. So
Debt service for the whole course of the bond, or
so it's
quarterly, annually? How?
Yeah. So the debt service is paid on an annual basis. So there will be 2 years worth of debt service. Let's say it's $1 million a year. So there would be $2 million in that liquidity reserve. The reason why that's important is that if there were ever to be a shortfall in the revenues, that liquidity reserve gives us a cushion so that we don't have to touch the city's resources. And if whatever happens turns out to be a prolonged event, then we can do those assessments against the property.
And what's
to
the
pay.
term of the loan? How long?
That is yet to be determined, but they're typically 25-year terms, I believe, that is what the state generally does.
And no, I understand that the developer is going to finance liquidity reserve and their revenues are going to pay for it. But at the end of the day, the city is the guarantor on this. So what is our recourse if, say, 12 years from now, halfway through, it's not there? Does the city have a first lien on the real estate? How does that work?
Sure. So when in the infrastructure agreement that we will have with the developer, to the extent that there are shortfalls, there will be assessments of those shortfalls against the property. All right. And then the developer will pay those shortfalls. In the event that the developer does not pay those shortfalls, then we do have the ability to put a lien against the property, just like we basically.
To be like a tax lien.
So we have we have
first
the
priority.
same collection remedies as we would as if it were a property tax, and which does put us first in line. So we try to do belt and suspenders on these types of projects. So
Great. That's all I have for right now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Zakin. I'd like to recognize Councilor Anissa Sabri-George, who has joined us. Do you have any comments at this time? I don't. Okay. Thank you for being here. All good questions. And so why don't we hear from the developer at this time? Mike, if you'd introduce yourself, and then also why don't you just introduce who's with you today?
I'll do that.
Yep, great, thank you.
Chairman Linehan, Councilor Lamartina, Councilor Zakim, Councilor George, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. We have a relatively short presentation on our North Station project, which Commissioner Racco described as the hub on Causeway. Let me describe a little bit about the people that are here and the partnership that we have, because I think it's useful for you to understand who the city is dealing with as it relates to the ability to perform on the project that's been described. So this project is a joint 50-50 joint venture partnership between Boston Properties and Delaware North. For Boston Properties, in addition to myself, Mike Cantalupa, Senior Vice President of Development for Boston Properties, I have Kevin Sheehan to my right, who's Vice President of Development and the lead development manager on the project, and George Needs to my left, who will describe in a little bit further detail how we're looking at some of the infrastructure and give a little color to what Commissioner Racco has described. Also here from Delaware North is our partner, Chris Mahar. Chris is in charge of real estate for Delaware North, and our counsel, Jim Shea, who's with Greenberg Traurig and has been providing advice to us on this. From a relationship standpoint, I think it's useful for, I think you know about both us and Delaware North, but I don't want to leave any stone unturned here. So Delaware North owns and manages the TD Garden. They also lease and manage the garage that is under the garden that is owned by the state. And they manage the concourse at North Station. So they're responsible for the activities that happen on that concourse. In addition to Boston Properties being a joint venture partner, we are also acting as development manager on behalf of the JV partnership and on behalf of Delaware North. I think even though there's two entities and there's going to be a substantial development in front of it, our intent as a partnership is to have this act as one seamless development. Just briefly about us up on the screens, if you can see them, we are owners of the Prudential Center, the Hancock Tower. We recently completed the most sustainable building or what we're referring to as the most sustainable building in the city of Boston, 888 Boylston Street. That's the building with the turbines on top of it, and a number of other major assets, including 100 Federal Street and Atlantic Wharf. Let me just move to the development and step through this a little bit and give you some color on it. I know that everybody is familiar with the site. You described the neighborhoods, Chairman Linehan. We very much look at this as a stitching together of the three neighborhoods that surround the site: North End, West End, and Beacon Hill. I think you're also probably aware that the North Station station itself is the third busiest transit center in the city, and so a very important gateway into the city. And at least as we look at it from a development perspective, Causeway Street has largely been underdeveloped and under-vitalized, and so we believe that the activity that we have here from the project will really add life to it. Just briefly, the site history, I think it's important for you to understand. This project goes back quite a ways. The original garden that we all know, this is the site that we're building on, was built in 1928. In 1980, this area was designated as an urban renewal area, and an RFP was issued in the mid-80s. And finally, a memorandum of understanding was issued or agreed to between Delaware North, the city, and the T, providing for the development of the site. It seems hard to believe it was this long ago, but in 1995, the TD Garden was actually completed, and there's a bit of trivia that the old garden stood for 3 years before it was finally demolished in 1998. So we are here today. We actually had a plan that was finally approved in 2014. What I'd like you to walk away from with this slide is that this project has been a long time coming, and so hopefully we've illustrated that for you. Let me just talk a little bit about the elements of the project and give them a little bit of color with a picture that's up on the screen. So I'll add to what Commissioner Racco has described. So if you hit the next slide, please. So the development program, as the Commissioner pointed out, is 200,000 feet. We've actually made great friends with a supermarket committee in the North End, headed by a number of North End residents, and we are happy to report, we've announced in the past that a Star Market will be the tenant for that. The creative office that the Commissioner referred to, in terms of the kinds of businesses that we foresee coming here, we really don't see it as a firm, as a place that will attract law firms or traditional service firms. There's a term in our office and out in the industry that's referred to as TAMI tenants. technology, advertising, media, information. And so we definitely view this as a place for the creative economy to grow, and you can see that with some of the tenants that already exist there today. There will be a expansion of the garden. You can't really see that in the images that we show out to the public. It's basically a 30-foot expansion from the face of the garden, from grade all the way up to the top of the garden. And then an additional parking facility. The parking facility will be managed entirely by Delaware North. So the facility that exists today and is leased from the state that Delaware North manages, they will own the facility under the new garden development and operate it as one large integrated facility. And then, well, that's what we're referring to as Phase 1A. From your perspective, I think this is all one phase because the podium will be built at the same time and continuously built up with a 269-room hotel. We announced recently that that would be with a hotel called Citizen M. Citizen M does not exist in the city of Boston today. It's actually in the middle of a national rollout. Citizen M stands for Citizen Mobile. It is actually what we refer to as a micro hotel, relatively small rooms but large common spaces. And we think that the hotel itself will just add a different dimension of vibrancy and will attract a different kind of user than actually comes to travel to the city of Boston today. And then finally, in the terms of that first phase, we have planned a 440-unit residential tower. Again, largely not really quite as small as the micro hotel rooms, but probably a smaller offering in terms of traditional rooms. And we expect that to attract a broad range of clientele. Our second phase, which really we're waiting for a specific date to announce going forward with that, will be tied probably with a user, is the last tower at the top of the building, which is a 525,000 square foot office building. So together with the innovations office space, we'll have about 700,000 square feet of office space. With that, let me just ask George Needs, who's been handling our iCube diligence, just to talk in a little bit more detail so you can see what the specific improvements are that are going to be brought to the district.
Thanks, Mike. So just to sort of walk you through how we intend to assemble and phase a site, as you can see on the screen, the area highlighted in blue is what we're calling the first phase, or Phase 1A, and that is the podium. That's essentially going to act as the building block for the rest of the development. And what that means is 100% of the infrastructure improvements will be delivered with this phase, which is currently under construction now. And with that, as Mike said, we're going to be delivering a host of amenities. We have a 60,000 square foot grocery store coming in, a big win for the city and the neighborhoods. We also have a movie theater coming in, so ArcLight Cinemas out of the West Coast, and then we're looking at bringing in a live music venue. So I think two great amenities to really kind of complement what we want to do here. And then on top of that, you'll see on the east portion of the podium, we're going to be delivering 175,000 square feet of creative office space over 5 stories. And this is set to be complete by October of 2018. And then what we're going to do is we're going to roll right into Phase 1B. So we have the residential tower. It's about 500 feet, 440 units. It's 100% rental. And then we have, as Mike explained, the 269 key hotel, who we are in agreement with Citizen M, who will be owning and operating that. And then, sorry, that will be set to be complete. We're targeting Q4 of 2019. And then we have the office tower, which will make up sort of Phase 2. That's 525,000 square feet of office. And it's designed in a way to attract sort of creative or traditional office users. So just some existing images to give you an idea of what the site's, the existing conditions look like. This is a shot looking east down Causeway Street. You'll see how far the arena is set back from the sidewalk, and obviously that creates this large sort of gaping open space, which I think was we feel was a big contributing factor to why there's really very little activity and a very little or no sense of place in this area. And you can also see there's no signage, and no, if you're standing there, no one would know North Station was even there. And this is what the project's going to look like upon completion. You can see bringing everything out to the sidewalk, just the level of activity that it's going to bring. It's really going to bring this place to life, and it's going to be a huge transformation. Similar view, sort of more on the east side of the site. Again, you have the arena setback. It's a large sort of visual block, and then if you look, this is the eastern portion of the podium. You'll see the 5 stories of creative office space. Under that, we're looking at the live music venue, and then the entrance into the parking garage, which actually exists today. And on top of that is the office tower. So to give you just a quick overview on the infrastructure improvements, as far as MBTA related improvements, we're constructing this brand new grand entrance to the station. What that is, it's known as the hub. It's really going to stitch the project together, and it's 15,000 square foot public plaza. As well as that, we're providing a connector, so commuters can now connect directly from the T to the commuter rail station. Obviously, that doesn't exist today. And then we're going to bring in a new MBTA ticketing office, and then some new signage, so giving the MBTA some branding, giving North Station a presence on the street, and also more typical wayfinding signage throughout the station as well. And then other public realm improvements, we're going to be drastically improving the sidewalks, landscape, hardscape. We're going to be reconfiguring the intersections, and then doing some significant improvements in Causeway Street as well. So traffic signal upgrades, and then bringing in a sort of 2-lane cycle track that will run down the central artery. And that will connect Commercial Street to the Charles River bike path. And then lastly, we're going to be conveying some private land over to public entities, be it the city or the MBTA. So this is a plan view of the improvements. Just first, this highlights the public space that we're going to be. It's going to sort of sit as a central artery. It's going to stitch the project together. That's known as the hub, and you can see what we're proposing here. I mean, it's a pretty dramatic space. It's 7 stories. It's also covered, so you're going to get this feeling of being indoor, outdoor, and there isn't really a space in the city quite like it. Delaware North will actually be programming it as well, so it will be very actively managed. There'll be events, exhibitions, and all those sort of done in a way to engage with the public. Some other MBTA improvements, you can see the new ticket office there, and then this is just on the right, on the bottom on the right of that plan, you'll see the connector, and that again is a below-grade connector that connects the T station to the commuter rail station. Today commuters making that transition have to actually go up onto the street, brave the elements, whereas this will make it seamless. A couple of images which show the design intent. We're looking to bring, historic images to that connector as a way to, make that historic connection with the public. And again, here's a closer up image of that. And lastly, talking about the public realm improvements, new hardscape, new landscape on West Walkway. We're going to be planting some new street trees on the Causeway Street sidewalk. Fortunately, given the fact we have these utilities under the sidewalk, we weren't able to plant street trees, but we did come up with a creative idea whereby we're going to introduce these sort of vertical planting walls as a way to, create some seasonal interest and some greenery and some life into the streets. And then we're also going to be installing these large granite seating blocks, and what those were, they're granite blocks that were salvaged from the original seawall, which is actually under the site. So again, it's a nice way of making a historic connection to the site, and in a way that's engaging with the public. So that's sort of the overview of the improvements and the phasing.
If I can just conclude by saying we are extraordinarily excited about this project. We think it's going to be everything it should be in terms of a gateway to the city from the north. It's something that I think we can all be proud of. And from a partnership standpoint, I think it's the the definition of what partnership should be between the private side that involves both the state and the city. So we thank you very much for your interest and hopefully approval. And we just, again, think it's going to be a great addition to the city of Boston.
Great. So I'll start with you, Council Lamartine. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm excited because I think that particularly as the downtown neighborhoods are growing, stuff like this is going to be very important. With the supermarket, retail shops, movie theater. It's a long time coming, but I did notice the Iron Horse. Is it the Iron Horse?
The Iron Horse, yes.
Wasn't there a place like that many years ago?
Many
The
years
old-
ago. I think
the old garden.
the
The old
architects
garden?
are taking a little liberty there, throwing that
Oh, all
name
right.
back on there.
I'm dating myself now.
You
as can
sure
see.
are.
It's a placeholder for the time
Yeah,
being.
I don't remember
Yeah.
that. So.
You remember that? I seen you there. No, I'm excited. Whatever we can do to help, this is great.
Thank you.
Council Zakin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. It's certainly helpful. I think as far as the I-cubed questions I had were already addressed by the commissioner, but I do just have one question for the development team. And where are you looking, time-wise? Obviously, as everyone's mentioned, the supermarket is hugely important to sort of a lot of our constituents. And if there's any update schedule-wise or when you estimate that would be online,
So the podium, as may have been articulated earlier, is scheduled to be finished from what's called a base building standpoint in October of 2018. And the space itself for the supermarket will likely be turned over perhaps a little bit earlier than that for the supermarket to fit their space out, to build it out. So I would say a reasonable time frame is sometime in the fourth quarter of 18 to the first quarter of 19 when the podium opens up. We'll still have plenty of work to do up above with additional buildings and so forth, but that I think is the right time frame.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Asabi George.
I'm very, I'm okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate all that I've learned. I've got a little bit of a head cold.
We hope you feel better.
Well, thank you for your presence here.
Thank you.
And so I'll join the chorus. One, it's not too often all three of us agree on anything. And two, this is a project. My mom used to say, good waiters get good tips. I think we've waited long enough and we're getting a good tip. This is a beautiful rendition of what that once very lively section of Boston before my time and Sal's was like, and now it's just going to be extraordinary. The fact that $30 million of public money is going to be applied to this to improve the public access, not only to the garden but to the commuter rail and to the T stops. And the linking of the T and the commuter rail, all of that is just what I firmly believe iCube was built for. So I want to thank you all for your time, your attendance, and your hard work. This hearing is ended.
Thank you very much.
Very nice.
Here we go.